Hi, I am Katie Threadgold, and I'm here to talk about Erik Erikson. Erik's mother was Carla Abrahamson. She became pregnant with Erik, and the father was not in the picture, and she wasn't married. So her parents suggested that she go to Germany and live with some relatives while she had Erik. So she had Erik on June 15th, 1902, in Frankfurt, Germany. She raised Erik on her own for 3 years. Then she married Erik's pediatrician, Dr. Theodore Homburger, when Erik was 3 years old. And then Dr. Homburger agreed to adopt Erik and raise him as his own, with the intentions that they would not tell Erik, the truth about his biological father. Erik was always suspicious as a kid that his parents were hiding something from him, and that actually both of his parents were not his biological parents. So they ended up telling him the truth. He was a little upset that they had lied to him, but it was something that he got over. Erik did well in school, and he received a great education. He got picked on in school because he was Jewish, but yet he had blonde hair and blue eyes, so he didn't really fit in the Jewish profile. After he finished high school, he went to Europe to pursue his art interests. His mother was very supportive of him, and he was there for almost 7 years, just traveling, doing sketches, trading his artwork for money or for things that he needed. His mother and Dr. Homburger were also very supportive financially for him as well, if he needed it. When he was 25, though, he decided that art was not going to be his career path. So he decided to return home. And he ran into a friend, which got Peter Bloss. And Peter helped him to get as a teaching job for some children, and which ended up being his gateway to the psychology field. One of the women was Anna Freud, Sigmund Freud's daughter. Anna had few children along with her friend Dorothy Burlingame, and Erik was tutoring both of them. They both really liked Erik. They really liked Peter, so they decided to offer a position for them to open up a school and for them to teach their children, as long as some friends, psychoanalytical school. Um, so just more specific. At that point, Erik took the opportunity to learn from Sigmund and Anna Freud. He was underneath Anna's wing specifically, and she taught him all about psychoanalysis. At first, he wasn't really excited about it, but clearly he mastered the material. In 1929, Erik met his wife, Joan Surson. Joan was a modern dance teacher and student. They met at a Venetian masked ball. Joan and Erik quickly fell in love. Joan became pregnant, so they moved in together, got married, and then they had their first son in 1930, and they had the second child in 1933. Joan and Erik were really great for each other. She had a lot of support for him through all his work. Once Erik completed his training, he wanted to leave Vienna and go somewhere else and be on his own and kind of be away from Anna and Sigmund Freud. Joan wanted to raise a family in a different atmosphere too, because this was kind of the time period when World War II was going on, and so the environment was not the safest, and she wanted to be somewhere different for her children. So initially they left Vienna and went to Copenhagen. Erik's intentions were to find his biological father because he knew he had some relatives there. However, that didn't really work out. He didn't find any work, and he couldn't find any information about his father. So they left shortly after and went to the United States, which they were there the rest of their lives. In 1933, Erik and Joan had their third child, the daughter. This is also when or 1938 is when they had their third daughter, when they were they were American citizens. Um, and Erik decided to change his last name from Homburger to Erikson. His son believes that they chose Erikson because he was a self-made man. He did keep the middle name Homburger just to um, give meaning to his adopted father, because he did really respect him and appreciated all that he did for him as a child and growing up. So the children and his wife also changed their names to Erikson as well. The boys were excited because they got picked on at school and were called Hamburger instead of Homburger. Erik worked at Harvard and lots of other prestigious universities while he was in the United States and throughout his career. Erik retired in 1970, and after he retired, he kept researching and writing along with Joan. They worked together really well. And Erik died in 1894 at age 91 in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And his wife continued to work on his research and writing until she passed away 3 years later. So Erik had a very interesting life, and it's amazing how much work that he was able to put in with the background that he had too. Erik's greatest contribution to the psychology world would definitely be his theory of psychosocial development on the 8 stages. It's in so many textbooks, and it hasn't really been changed too much. I think the basis meaning of changing is that not everyone will reach these stages in the same age, just based on life events and the environment someone is living in. Also, the culture someone is living in might not allow them to reach these stages, which has been researched more since his passing. The first stage is trust versus mistrust. From birth to about 1.5, 2 years old, and this is when babies really learn that if their parents are there for them, if they cry, if they'll pick them up, or if they just give them attention. It's very impactful for their life. The second stage is autonomy versus shame and guilt. This is when children start to reach some independence and explore a little bit on their own around ages 2 to 4 years old. The next stage is the third stage, which is initiative and guilt. This is about 4 and 6 years old. During this stage, child will develop intellectually and work on their fine motor skills. So they'll be preparing, if you think about it, they'll be preparing to go to school usually. So I'm just getting ready for all that. The fourth stage is industry versus inferiority. This is from ages 6 to 11. So this is the school ages. The kids really master what they learned, previously in their life, what they were taught, and they just expand on those principles. It's also really important that their caregivers are giving them reassurance and that they're doing well and encouragement. The fifth stage is identity versus role confusion. This is during adolescence, so a very important time. Kids really find out, who they are. They're in their teen years. They find where they're going to fit in the world. During the sixth stage is intimacy versus isolation. So this really goes back to the first stage. So if babies aren't, given that trust, they have a hard time with this stage of intimacy. This is the 20s and 30s, so when really romantic relationships happen, people often get married. They learn to care for one another, receiving that care and love, and also giving it. And then the seventh stage is between ages 40, 65-ish, and the seventh stage is generativity versus stagnation. So generativity is just being involved to the younger generations and teaching. This is kind of during parenthood and giving back to the world. So you feel like you made a contribution. And then the final stage is the theory of the theory of psychosocial development is integrity versus despair. So this is just feeling like, did you live a satisfying life? Are you happy how things turned out? And are you ready for death? If you have despair, you're usually afraid to die, and you're just unsatisfied with maybe how things had turned out in your life. So his stages are still very important today, and they're very impactful. There's lots of psychologists that are using their work and expanding it. Like I had mentioned, the stages might not be reached in the scenario that for Erik had set them up in, but they're more phases, and he did a lot of great work for the community of psychology. So thanks for listening.